What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 72 of Sales Stories in Real Life. I'm your host, Alex Bruschi. This is the show where professional salespeople share their stories about memorable buying experiences. Today, we've got Dan Shuftan in the house, the VP of Digital Revenue and Growth at 10 Pearls. He has his weekly newsletter, the Shuftan Job Report. Make sure you go check that out. Dan, really excited to kind of take a little new spin on an episode here. I know you're an old school salesperson at heart, but you have very much adopted the kind of modern age of selling approach. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. What's up, everybody? Whether you're new here or a seasoned listener, please drop a subscribe and like on your favorite streaming platform, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast. Super helpful for getting the show out to more people. And if you yourself have ever wanted to start your own podcast, send me a DM on LinkedIn, and in just 2 to 3 hours per week, I can help you to start and maintain your own podcast. Make your voice heard and start a podcast today. Now, back to the conversation.
Love it. Thanks for having me. Excited to chat. Yeah, I'm certainly old school with a new school mentality. Um, and I've set up a very simplistic term, the tripod, which is how I believe that's my sales acumen. I started back when there was literally only cold calls and there wasn't emails, and you would get incoming calls and you knock each other out of the way to pick up the phone type of like that kind of pit mentality. And um so I believe that a phone is more than just like an internet tool or a texting tool. I believe there's power in a voice, and there's power in communicating, and there's power in conversation. And I've never been afraid of picking up the phone and dialing somebody. um it's a worthwhile, unnecessary evil to get to the next level, even if it's just a voicemail. But it's a differentiator because I don't think anybody just wants to sit there and get clogged up with 6,000 emails. Um, the second thing is, talking about emails. I'm very anti AI blasts and throw spaghetti against walls and hope and pray for good things to happen. If you do send cold emails, and actually I do like the challenge, in my to get responses and to test out the A/B testing to see what works. But to me, it's more about like the funny dad joke type messaging and the real high personalization that goes into getting their attention. And frankly, obviously, as a salesperson, I get a lot of high when it comes to selling deals, but I get a lot of high when I get responses, especially when I've done my due diligence and done my research and really done something different to get someone's attention. That's the thrill you get for that call. But also, like, when you ask the question, like, hey, you get 1,000 people who email you every day. Why did you take the call? And their response is, you made me laugh, or you nailed something that I said. That's a memorable experience.
Before we get started, I want to introduce you to Lead Feeder. We all know the struggle of identifying website visitors and turning them into valuable leads. Imagine having the power to identify companies visiting your website, track their behavior in real time, and seamlessly integrate it all into your CRM. With customizable notifications, lead scoring, and GDPR compliance, Leadfeeder is changing the lead generation game. Head over to leadfeeder.com, LEADFEEDER.com for a demo today. Now, back to the conversation.
Experience. That's what's going to get you to that next level and want them to keep chatting with you, and put you one step ahead of the competition. And then the third thing that I do is I'm very keen to social. I mean, literally, I work for one of the oldest and greatest social media agencies around right now, and it's fun to be able to sell into something that you're passionate about and you use every single day. But I've been very good at networking, and it's always been what I've done. Initially building a giant Twitter following, 30,000 Twitter followers in the sports space is where I came from. And then for the last 2 or 3 years, really shifting my attention to just being a voice, but my voice on LinkedIn. And I think the authenticity that shines is my voice and my jokes and my temperament and the way that I speak is the same in my emails, is the same in my social, it's the same in person, it's the same on the call. So it's not AI driven, it's not inflated, it's not some ghostwriter. This is me doing all the work and the effort. But I've been really good at networking and asking for referrals and not being ashamed of someone saying like I can't help you. I mean that's my job anyways to be told yes or no. But I think that three-prong approach has gotten me where I am in my career. It's going to take me to the next stages in my career, and whatever I do next. But for now, I'm incredibly happy and bunkered down, and really excited about this role that I started a few months ago, um, because it's really what people are buying: content, influencer, creator, social. It's the new dollar. So yeah, I'm ready to dive in, chat more, but yeah.
Well, first off, good stuff. I think it's like kind of funny and ironic to point out that speaking of like, referrals and just networking in general, how you and I got connected is that you and my sister are coworkers. So I think that's kind of cool. But I have lots of questions about your tripod approach because I think it's fantastic. Let me start off with this because you mentioned kind of the challenge of getting email replies, and I think that's something very top of mind for a lot of people right now. Obviously, it's no secret that, to your point, folks are just blasting more and more emails out. It makes the inbox just a lot more terrible of an experience, honestly. I imagine, a fraction of the outreach that like a traditional decision maker does. And even for me, it's quite frustrating. So you had mentioned just like what like an accomplishment and thrill, if you will, and how into personalization you are. Why don't you walk us through that? Let's say you're going to reach out to Joe Schmo, right? Like, what's kind of your process of doing your research, personalizing something? Take us through that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. Um, a few weeks ago, without dropping names, um, I got us into, and I'll answer the question. I'll probably ask you to repeat the question, but the I got us into a QSR brand, and team was excited, real high level CMO. And I asked the team at the very beginning of this experience, this exercise called my full-time job, what would be your favorite places I can get you into? Kind of like a checklist on yourself. I do that in my personal life too. I actually have a list of 100 companies that I want to get into every single year, and I use that as a checklist on myself. But our company had like one specific QSR brand that they really wanted. And I was going out to New York City to meet with the team for the first time. Um, and I was like, wouldn't it be great if I could bring a call with that company who they wanted? And so I did a ton of research, found out we went to the same school, dove into an old podcast quote, used that as my subject line, um, went to bed probably about midnight, got a buzz like 12:05 from that CMO who was like, great email, basically. You did your due diligence. Let's set up a chat. So it came to New York with going like, by the way, I just got us into so and so as well. Um, they were like, cool. I was thrilled because but because to me that's a different so the that's the challenge that I like. I mean, I think I'm getting back to the question, but like I think there's like you said, like I get 100 emails a day from everybody, and everybody wants to improve this and improve that, and it's not going to happen. And to me, the thrill of the hunt and the thrill of the relationship and the thrill of the connection is what really gets me excited. Though I've moved into more growing in my career of running teams in the past and doing more of like the song and dance and the closing and finishing, there's still like a joy and a kind of a fun and a high that I get from building these relationships. And um Yeah, I mean, that's the old school. That's the old school. Like I've never worked in a job where deals flowed into me. Like I hear that and I'm like, wow, that must be
Must be
nice.
nice.
Um, no, that's the joy. That's the and I get a lot of excitement about being able to bring up that icebreaker that I got in on that call and then to remember of like, ah, yeah, that's you type of thing. Because truly, there's nothing in a body, there's nothing you can say in an email. There's nothing that really stands out that, I mean, unless you're throwing out 100,000 emails, you'll get like three. And that's what I was saying at the beginning is like, sure, you can fill the funnel with like blasting out emails,
Yeah.
but it's a very, very, very much a quality game, especially in 2023 and 2024 and beyond, because most of our friends on the marketing side, unfortunately, don't have opportunities and roles. Budgets are frozen,
Yeah.
and they're going to buy. If they're going to buy from people who they trust and stand out and are memorable. And that's always been my thing, to be a solution solver, a person I can go and say, I need something, that's called Dan. And I've been very particular to take roles in my life where I can come with a quick turn need, but also like that service, that agency who we can kind of lean on because,
Right.
hey, Dan's there. It can't be that bad type of thing. Don't know if I answered the question correctly, but, or even know what the question was, but hey, let's go with it.
No, perfect. And I really think you hit on some key points there, like particularly like, is the person who you're emailing, have they been on a podcast, right? Throw a little quote that they said in the subject line. It's just that extra layer of effort. And I can even say it myself. Like I said, I get a fraction of the outreach. The other day I got an email from someone saying, like, hey, I saw you have X amount of subscribers and you've released X amount of videos, right? Like, would you be open to learning ways that you can improve that, right? And it's just like just that little extra thing, right? Like so many people are like, "Oh, I can get you leads and I can get you more listeners," but like just to take that extra little second, it goes a long way. Shifting gears a little bit, I really find the beginning of your career very fascinating, and particularly like how you've just really adopted this kind of like modern way of selling, if you will, in such stride. And I can relate because my first job, ironically enough, my CRM was manila envelopes, right? It was your classic Rolodex, right? Phone, a desktop phone, right? Slamming phones. So I can relate, even though this was early 2010s. What do you think is the biggest shift as far as selling and buying goes between then and now?
Good question.
And I can even throw this as you too as a second caveat. Do you think things are more similar than
No,
people think from now and then?
I mean it's the same thing. I mean, back in the day, it wasn't an email, it was a phone call. I mean, selling in itself has completely shifted. Shifted. I mean, the entire premise of selling because of COVID, and I can get into that in a second. But to answer your question, um, I think there's a lot more tools and bells and whistles right now. Like I can get anybody's email I want like
Right.
that. I can get your cell phone number, which is quite frightening. I can get as much information. You know, these are all these tools that you can buy and subscribe to. Um, so I think the interesting thing is it's you can get any information you want, and
Yeah.
that can actually be a disservice to you because you can get your mind goes racing to anything, and the difference really is you've got to find different ways of standing out in across just a true. It used to be a phone call, but true, the same thing that happened back in the day was a network and a relationship. It might have been like, hey, I'm going to meet Paul at the bar and we're going to exchange notes on a napkin. But the point is, Paul's going to send or is going to meet so and so at the country club for dinner and be like, you got to meet Dan. Now it's I'm going to go to that event. I'm going to send that email. I'm going to talk at that conference. I'm going to but truly it's always going to be about building your personal brand. I think that's not enough salespeople understand the power of a personal brand. Um, And I think right now in sales, you have to master various tools. You have to be good and understand how to get on people's radars on different channels. How do I get on your radar? How do I enter a conversation? How do I not be so pushy? Just because someone's following me doesn't mean they're going to automatically want to buy from me. How do I create a relationship? So really what it is the difference now is you just have more accessibility and you have more it's easier to get on people's radars, but it also a lot that also can make you a lot more quote unquote creepy and strange. And look, if you're randomly texting me, eh, I don't know, thank you. I also think, and just to kind of expand on selling in general has really, really changed. And something in our pre-conversation was really back in the day, you never knew if they truly were on a phone call with you. Look, like you didn't have Zoom, you didn't have modern pitches, you weren't looking at me. You could have been on a call with me and thrown your phone in a fish tank and walked back in 30 minutes, and I was talking to I was talking to Rocky, your pet fish. Who knew what's going on? And then so that's really what's changed is Zoom and where we want to has completely shifted how we work. Sometimes to your better, sometimes to your worse. A good salesperson understands a nonverbal. Um, Sometimes when I have colleagues pitching, I will jump on calls just to see people's nonverbals, the eyebrow raises, the smiles, and I'll take notes. That's like when you're in the office and you're pitching various people and you're scanning the room and you didn't know if it was like that random shadow in the back who was actually the decision maker who was on their computer the entire time, but like it gives you an advantage. So that's been great. Now, the disadvantage is it used to be in person. And as we're shifting back to that, it's coming back, thankfully. But what I like to do is I'd rather spend 5 minutes on an icebreaker, just warming up, doing my due diligence, talking sports. If they want to talk sports, it's the easiest thing as an icebreaker for me. Talking about life or yada, 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 various topics. That 15 minutes is just that quick presentation. And to me, it's a here's what we do type of mentality. How can we help? Choose your own adventure. And then 5 minutes at the end just to kind of wind down. And to me, it's the power of the walk to the elevator, like we used to do when you have to go to the agencies and you'd be like, that 5 minutes and that person who they'd send back when you leave typically was a person who was to follow up with, who you really wanted to get as much information was because you couldn't get it in like that hour presentation.
Yeah.
So that's how it's really changed. And you've got to kind of adapt that old school mentality to the new school mentality. But now you can have like a poker mentality where you're like, huh, I saw that eyebrow raise. That person was interested in that. And now you can even talking about like modern. I see a world in the future where, AI can be used as an advantage. I mean, note taking, who says this, who says that. I mean, look, how many people have missed? How many times have as a salesperson missed what they said because you can't take notes while you're talking, and if you don't have someone on the call. So look, technology's been great. Technology has helped everybody in their sales career, but you got to figure out how to use it to the best of your ability. Um, and you got to kind of have to pump the brakes because there's so many tools that can overwhelm you and make your head spin, and that's not what you want.
Yeah, well said. I like a lot of the distinctions that you did there. I have to kind of ask, talking about blending this kind of like old school and modern
Mhm.
selling approach, and especially for you with, obviously your newsletter has been pretty wildly successful. To be honest, I was like kind of blown away when you told me how many subscribers you have. What would you say to those folks that are still like maybe a little bit hesitant to start like building a personal brand or maybe like getting out there on LinkedIn or launching a newsletter, right? Whatever it may be for them. What would you say for folks that are hesitant about that kind of stuff and still are having trouble getting started?
Your voice is the most important thing you have, truly. There's nothing more important than your personal brand. That's what differentiates you. That's what makes you stand out. That's what gets you new business. That's what gets you referrals. That's what gets you jobs in the first place. Um, I understand the hesitancy, and there's a lot of shift of like people are very scared to kind of put their opinions out.
Right.
I'm not asking for you to write a jobs newsletter. I'm not asking you to break down people. I'm asking you just to converse. LinkedIn has turned into the world's biggest cocktail party, and everybody's invited. Truly, everybody's invited. And it's the one place where you're like, I don't know where I can go to talk to like these giant marketers or technologists. They're all there. They're communicating, but they're human. It's kind of the place where you just kind of wind down. It's like what Twitter used to be for the live sports experience. And I don't think anybody needs to go out and build a blog. Trust me, there's enough out there. We don't need to build another newsletter. What you need to do is jump into the comments, create that rapport, create that relationship. I actually think the comments are more important than the actual topic. Be relatable and be memorable and be funny and have some personality, and the results will start to flow. The numbers will start to rise. Um, if you're not tapping into your personal voice and tapping into your own POV and trying to differentiate yourself, it's really hard because salespeople are now turning into influencers, are turning into podcasters, are turning into um, a brand. And you have to rise with that tide. Um, so I'm not telling you to do everything and be everywhere, but go find the people you're targeting. Get on their radar. Start conversing with them. It's a free pass to their world and use that in an outreach. Hey, we just talked on LinkedIn. Screen grab it. Like do something that stands out and personalizes yourself. But definitely, definitely, if you are relying on just quote unquote new school tactics, you're going to have a very, very hard, hard and long or short career. Um, yeah.
No, that's a good take. Relatable for me as well. I would say probably close to my first 2 years on LinkedIn was just like purely dropping comments. And one thing that I'll say is, I mean, you could probably attest, I'm quite sure you would rather someone who's trying to reach out to you drop a comment on your LinkedIn post rather than cold call you 3 times in a week or send you 4 cold emails in a week. So it's just that extra layer to your point of personality. Love that take. Another thing, as far as your background, that I found really fascinating. This is the first time we've ever had a former sports agent on the show. Talk to me a little bit about your sports agent background. Maybe like what did you learn from that? What have you kind of taken that into your future sales roles? I'm really fascinated to hear.
Yeah. I when I was growing up, my wife, then girlfriend, HBO used to be the power hour of Arliss and Sex in the City. And I would Arliss was like that comedic style. I was like, I want to be a sports agent. My dad's an attorney. I was like, just makes a lot of sense. And um, look, I chose a different path. I went into sports, but what I did is I figured out that social media was my path in, and um, I had the opportunity to work for a giant sports agency as a consultant and build out their social media both internally and then externally for the athletes. And after a few years, I got myself certified and I started cutting deals for the athletes. What I learned, probably the hardest client I will ever have to deal with in my entire life. It's a different kind of client because it's their being, it's their money, it's not like how you sometimes you think of like our jobs are monopoly money. Like it's their it also took a ton of research and a ton of personalization because I had to sell a lot of these athletes who weren't, some of them are really powerful and easy to turn. Some of them are like, who the heck's that guy or that gal? So you had to be really, really particular and really had to do the research. But to me, it was a fun way to get into brands. It was a fun way to have, that sports is my passion. And to be able to walk into a room of a brand team and talk about a certain athlete and show a clip of them and like that was fun and relatable. And it was a really I mean, in terms of like what I learned, the funny thing about being an athlete, it took me on a path to where I am now, which was like athlete, athletes, all through social, moved over to like an athlete influencer company, but is always in the sports social sector. And then I shifted away because I was like, sports only has so much money. Oh my goodness, look at this other side of the business. That's where all the money is. Where has this been for the last decade? But in terms of like, there's no life lessons. I find when I sat there trying to sell a person was the hardest job I've ever had to do because unlike a product or a platform or a service, they don't get injured, they don't get arrested, they don't send out bad tweets typically. Um, they don't drop a fumble in the Super Bowl. Um, and for the most part, you with good PR and personalization, it's just a product. But selling into a person, this is why I look at like recruiters as like some of the best salespeople out there because selling a person who has feelings and emotions and can skip and can walk, that's truly what I learned. I was like, nothing is harder than selling a person. So if I can do that successfully, I can sell anything. So that's really, I mean, that's one lesson and definitely adaptability because some of them could be moved from this city to this city in a dime, and you're like, oh, now I got to deal with this marketplace. Um, but what I did learn is most of my deals were sold through building their personal stories. So to me, it's always been, I was like, go on podcasts. This was 2000, early 2010s. I was like, adapt to social, be a voice, put out what you want, make content, make video. Um, that's what sold and that's what differentiated. I mean, it was like I can get into any potato chip brand, but it was more like this guy, like I'll give you an example. I had an athlete who was a giant book nerd. And I ended up having this athlete start talking about books of the month. And you're like, well, this came out of nowhere. Ended up getting this athlete a deal, like a book of the month club, where he was recommending a book and he's getting paid as like, you know, here's a code. So like, yeah.
That's awesome. I think there's like kind of that sweet spot where like your passions and work can meet, and I think that's like a real perfect example of that.
Mhm.
And obviously, beneath everything you said, I can imagine that the relationship business in a world like that is just on a totally another level. And to your point, selling a person is way different than selling a company or a platform or a service. Really, really fascinating there. One of the things that I had to ask you too, because we talked about this pre-show, and this was also just so fascinating to me is you mentioned that every month you send out a monthly pipeline letter. Now, this is totally different from the newsletter. We'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But you mentioned something about writing a monthly pipeline letter. Could you walk us through that?
Sure. So I build giant pipelines. That's what I do. I'm proud of what I do, and I'm proud of knowing knowing a lot of people who like me. Maybe my wife's paying him nicely. I don't know, but they seem to like me. But what I do is I take the combination of old relationships and new relationships. Again, there's your pipeline is a mix of sometimes for the better or worse, the people you take in with you, and then there's the people who are kind of new to the system who we've had those calls with or like get back to me in February. Fine. I put all those people into a list, and every single month I send a personalized update. Typically, people really like when I talk about my twins, the Shuff twins. I've gaga goo goo over them, so I'll bring them up on every single conversation. I'll usually send a picture. I'll give an update on me, making fun of either my sports teams or something about me, just to be personalized, just to be human, or something about my life that's changed. And then it's very, very just um, low stress, no, I'm not expecting anything, but it's like, hey, this is what some of the cool things that we've done over the last few weeks or since we've chatted last. As a reminder, this is what we do here. If you want to talk, let's chat. And I do that because there's nothing that aggravates me more than someone who wants to take a call for no particular reason. If you've done the call and you've done your spiel, there's nothing else that can change. There's no you've gotten to the qualifying. You're done. Now it's that like awkward waiting, and the real good salespeople know how to continue down that path. So to me, that's always been something that stands out. I'll usually put a meme in there related to something around that time of the year. Again, my whole thing has always been use my personality, use my humor, be memorable. And typically, the places I work for, the work speaks for themselves. What it does is it builds a pipeline in a pipeline. If you got 1 out of 100 who came back to you and were like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about you." Um, but the real interesting thing is the amount of people who read it. I mean, I was getting 20% open rate, and it just worked. It just really, really worked. And it's something that, and even if it's not as humanly goofy as I do, maybe it's just a quarterly update for people, but just make it less pushy and less salesy.
Yeah.
Make it more about like the wonderful things you're doing and the wonderful things that you've seen and the wonderful things that they're doing if you want to hyper personalize it, or things that you see in the marketplace. But it allows you to be relatable, but also it also allows you to be people want to buy from people who know the industry and love the industry and understand the industry. And like you were saying, if you have a passion for selling, and my job as the I call myself the big mouth frontline is I want you to run through a brick wall to use and to talk to me again, to use my service. And that's what I want. I want them to be like, oh yeah, that was a great conversation. I forgot about that. Or like I was supposed to ping him. To me, it's been an incredible part of the armor. And I'll doing it for like 5 years. I'll continue doing it every single month until they say no more. You've taken. I'm so sick of you. You've driven me crazy. So
I mean, speaking of tripods earlier, I feel like there's kind of like a real like three-pronged approach there too, where it's like you're staying top of mind, you're humanizing yourself, and it's just like almost like a sense of community. Like to your point, it's like you're giving updates about your twins, you're throwing in a little meme, you're giving personal life updates. I really, really like that, and candidly, I might steal that one from you.
that's okay.
Um, one last question that I want to ask you before we jump. Unfortunately, time is running out fast. Could keep chatting up with you all day here. Tell us a little bit about the newsletter, the Shuftan Job Report.
Mhm.
How did you get into it? What are you doing? Where can people find it? Where can people find you? Go ahead and plug away.
Yeah, great segue. Community. I've always really built these little communities. Um, and this is my newest and probably my greatest community. The Shuftan Job Report is posted. It's you can't miss my bright and shiny face, my ugly mug on LinkedIn. I've definitely figured out the algorithm. Or it's figured out me. We seem to like each other right now. But what it is and what it does is 2023 is just not a good year for me for various reasons. Just wasn't a good year for me, and it wasn't good for a lot of people. And a lot of people who I was selling to, and a lot of people who I knew and really enjoyed lost jobs. And it's that sort of like helpless feeling, like how do I help?
Yeah.
And instead of like that passive, like, well, if I hear something, I'll tell. Like I can't stand when someone says that. I rather they don't say anything. I thought it was like, look, I've my entire life I've been a yento. Fiddler on the Roof is a yenta. I'm a yento. It's a connector. I'm the old lady who's connecting young lovers, but in a more personalized B2B sense. And I started pumping out. I saw a few people who were doing this, and I was like, I can do that. And my tone was marketing and sales, people who I'd want to be selling to or buying from. And then one of my mentors was like, make a newsletter, like make this a. And so look, it kind of turned into my hobby. Like I'll stick a ball, I'll work, I'll watch a ball game in the background. I'm not gonna tell you my ways, but I find about 200 roles. Now it's people sending me a lot of opportunities and then Tuesday and Thursday, so that's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Once a week, I also will do an entry level one, which is like people who are just graduated. I was doing the intern report for a while when before internships were popular, which they're in right now. Um, and then Tuesday and Thursday, it's as an homage to faces in the crowd. Like we used to see in Sports Illustrated, we were like, Dan Shuftan from Deerfield, Illinois was bald. I do a candidates in the crowd. It's a way for someone to tell their story. And then I kind of put a forward around it. It's kind of like a fun little way of getting people's attention. And I post that Tuesday and Thursday, and it's gotten not directly from me, but 15 people of the candidates have been hired. Yeah, and then three people I've helped in a fractional sense. So I've gotten 18 people hired this year from either jobs they've seen on the report or recruiters they've seen on the report or connecting to some of the candidates, which has just been awesome. The funny thing about the Shupton job report is now when I send out emails to people, they know who I am without even like reading about. They're like the Shupton name, and they'll be like, "You do a lot of good for my community, and I have no interest in buying your service, but I really like what you're I really like what you're doing." And you're like, "Thanks." um, but it's really super interesting, and really what it's done is, I do it for the good of humanity, but certainly as a salesperson, people eventually are going to send the elevator back down to me. Like I've heard people who will say to me, as soon as I get in my role, you listened, you helped, you're not your typical salesperson.
Amazing.
Um, I'm not going to guarantee I'll buy from you, but I will include you in that list of agencies or services or whatever it is. It's again, it's all about making those connections and differentiators. In this point, to me, it's just a feel good concept. But look, if I can make it help in my career and do well for my business because I did well for someone, it's just networking. It's one side helping the other. So
It's just a home run from every single angle. Folks, go check out Dan Shuftan on LinkedIn, Shuftan. Check out the Shuftan job report. Really, really can't commend you enough for putting that together. I really, really hope some folks get on there, especially folks that are in my network who are on the market. Dan, thank you so much for sharing both your wisdom and experiences with us all. Sales Stories in Real Life, fam. We will see you
thanks.
next week. Cheers.
Cheers.